Kevin, what are you looking at?
The butt end of a really big welder. So I'm looking at this data sheet here, and the power i-MIG 253DPi, and it's saying 60% duty cycle at 250 amps. No, 100% at 200 amps. Of course, it's got two great big fans back here on the back too. That helps a lot. So this is a double pulse MIG welder. It's also a stick welder, but primarily it's a big monster MIG welder. Primarily set up, oddly enough, for aluminum. That's where the double pulse seems to come into play best, is over in welding on aluminum, welding on more exotic metals and what have you. So as you can see here, we've got a really nice little display panel. The presets, not only can you save, there's nine different presets that you can select, and save when you find a parameter, parameters that you really like. It's synergic also. And you might be asking, well, no, wait, time out. What the heck is synergic? What kind of welding is that? Well, it's not really a kind of welding. That's just a setup on the machine where basically all you're doing is you're telling the machine, I am running, what size wire you happen to have in there, and I am welding on steel or aluminum or whatever. And then the machine says, oh, these are the settings you want. This is what, the industry has said, well, these work pretty darn good. Let's start here. Which is great to start out with, and then you can come over and fine-tune them just a little bit for whatever you're doing. It has a 2T and 4T function. Has a nice little gas test button, so you can check and make sure you've got gas flow. You can also adjust your gas pressure or your gas flow on your regulator or flow meter or whatever you're using. Got a little wire jog button, so you don't have to sit there and hold the trigger to feed wire through it. And then your amps panel, your volt and hertz and panel over on this side. It's got a selector switch over here for 030, 035, or 040 wire. And then your wire type is right in here. This is what would kick in with your synergic settings. So steel, aluminum, a couple different types, stainless. And then your mode button over in here for stick welding, straight MIG welding, single pulse MIG, double pulse MIG, and a setup panel. Damn, I wonder what that's for. So let's just try out the single pulse. And for settings, let me see, I've got 160 on the amps. I've got a -2 on the volts. This is something weird with this machine, I think. The voltage on this machine in the single pulse mode reads from a -5 to a +5. That's just over what the machine says you need for the settings that you put in it. So you can get a little less wire, a little less volts, a little more volts. You can adjust it a little bit that way. You can also adjust the wire feed, or the amperage rather, which also controls the wire feed. More amps, more wire. Less amps, less wire. And then I've got inductance is set at 4, and we're working with steel. We're working on single pulse, and this is just 1/8 inch cold roll. So we're just going to get a little tack on the front and the back. And then I'll go ahead and run some single pulse on one side. We'll flip it over. We'll go to double pulse. Try it on the other side. So I got a few little BBs there to clean off, but nowhere near as bad as like my other machine does. So let's flip it over. We'll go over to double pulse. We'll do that outside seam. And in case you're wondering, what the heck's the difference between single pulse and double pulse? The way I understand it is single pulse, you're pulsing the voltage on and off, or not on and off, up and down. Full welding or full welding voltage, less welding voltage. So you can control the heat better. So you get a nice big burst to get penetration, then you get a smaller pulse just to keep the puddle hot, rather than just blowing right through like aluminum or bronze or something like that. Like you're welding on a car body. The double pulse is you're pulsing both the voltage and the current. So you wind up more with like a stack of dimes. On, off, on, off, on, off, more of a thing. Let's go to double pulse. As far as the settings go, so we're still at 160 amps and we're at 0 volt. Just remember, we're in synergic setting, so the machine is picking the voltage, and what I'm setting is either a -5%, I think it is, or a +5%. Right now I'm just telling the machine, you pick it for me. And then we've got just a couple other settings we can play with here, like the pulse frequency. Right now, go back there. Pulse frequency in hertz, we'll set it at 3. The pulse time on, we'll set it at 70. And then the peak arc force, let's set it at, what the heck, let's go a -1. But look how few, the few BBs there are. So here's the double pulse side, and there's the single pulse side. Single pulse is definitely smoother, a little more spatter right up in there. It does look like a little bit of a ripple, you know, like it was trying to stack some dimes in there. And I'm sure that's just tweaking a setting on the machine. So that's just a quick look at this Everlast Power i-MIG 253DPi. It is on sale right now for $2,200, regularly $2,850. Remember, it's set up primarily as an aluminum machine. It was an exotic machine. So you can bet there's going to be some aluminum playing with going on here. We'll come up with a new video for that pretty soon. So I'm going to go back and play with this machine some more. You guys are going to reach down there and hit that like button for me, and I'll see you next time. So what we have here is a new Everlast Power thingy.